there are other very many sporting activities, including rugby, where Kenya is involved, where all these things do happen. Why would MPs decide that this is the best place to go, probably benchmarking or anything that they're calling it?
I think it's totally a miscalculation by our parliamentarians. I do not support that trip, especially where it is done at the taxpayers' expense. Senator Omanga has tried to explain that she's there on her own expense. But then I think as a public leader, she also ought to be a bit modest and not look like she is vomiting on Kenyans after she's too full. She should remember that even the money that she would call personal money is the salary that she's earning from the taxpayers. And for that reason, I think once you have an advantage of getting this kind of a trip, you don't need to show it on Kenyans' faces all over, because they feel like their money is being misused. And you know, perception actually in politics is very, very important. And whether that trip for her, particularly because she has been very vocal about it, has been sponsored by the government or by taxpayers, is a different story altogether. But again, for those MPs who have been taken there through taxpayers' money, I think is a miscalculation. I don't think it's something that we needed to engage in as a country, as a parliament. I think it's something that doesn't augur very well with the public. And we must not only be seen to be using public resources, of course, in the right way, but we must also exercise the same in whatever we do. Nevertheless, I would also want to point out that for Kenyans, we also don't need to get so excited about people traveling abroad, because if you go to the airport, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport here, you will find that there are so many planes which are landing and others are taking off. Kenyans are traveling, whether they are politicians or not, they are traveling to wherever they go. And of course, when you are a public servant,
whose money is being spent.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
The biggest problem really is the issue of perception. So if you travel and Kenyans perceive like you are misusing their funds, whether you're actually misusing or not, that perception is very important to take care of.
Of course, the team that's there includes members of the Sports and Culture Committee of the National Assembly and Bunge FC. That's Parliament's football team. And the cost, according to this story by the Daily Nation, comes to about 45 million shillings. How did you miss out on that trip to the World Cup? I'm sure you must have a position on Bunge FC.
Well, yes, I'm a member of Bunge FC. I'm one of the top players for Bunge FC. But Fred, let me say that Parliament as an institution, we need to carry out some. Parliament, we need to check on how we can improve our image as an institution, because over the years it appears that the addition has been made by Kenyans and the media that whatever MPs do needs to be criticized, needs to be blown out of proportion, because that's what I see. And I think this is something that we are going to do as parliamentarians, because the public appears to be against Parliament for really no apparent reason.
Are you saying that this is being blown out of proportion?
Yes, it is, because we are an institution that is in charge of legislation, and we supervise various arms of government. And sports is one of the areas that Kenyans really want to succeed in sports, whether it is football. We are doing very well in athletics, but we have not succeeded in football. And even in Parliament, where I sit, members we are ourselves footballers, because we have a parliamentary team, Bunge football team, which participates in tournaments across this region. We participate in regional tournaments, and I find nothing wrong if a few of our members have been given permission or have been sponsored by Parliament to attend.
Just be kind enough to our viewers and probably explain what kind of value we should expect from that trip to the World Cup by these MPs.
First of all, this is like any other working trip. We go to conferences. We go to World Bank conferences to participate in World Bank conferences, and we come back with a report. So this to Parliament, this is similar to just like you'd go to a World Bank conference in London or wherever, and bring a report about what happened. So we want, in the next session, I think we want Kenya as a country to participate in World Bank at the very final level.
Okay.
And we expect our members who are in this trip to come back with a report with recommendations which are going to help this country to move forward. Therefore, Kenyans really need to desist from mob lynching members of parliament all the time.
There's another member of parliament next to you. Do you share the sentiments of Mheshimiwa Tandi?
Let me say, modesty is a virtue. Being modest. You see, in my Kikuyu language, there's a saying that when you are full, you must cover your stomach. To me, the problem I have with this thing is that show of some immodesty. Yes, it is good to go there. Yes, by the way, I support the principle of our leaders interacting with other countries, and this is one form of that interaction. That's very positive, and for obvious reason. One, no man is an island, no man stands alone. So Kenya cannot live in isolation. And by the way, if you look at our policies and also several laws, in fact, I would say vast majority of those laws, they have been copied elsewhere. Of course, there's some negative into it that one can say we are not original thinkers, we are not inventors. But on the good side of it is that some of those things that we have copied are quite positive. And a good example I can give, and there are too many, is let's say like our labor laws. Like now here, you are here working for this media station. You have some rights. You cannot be dismissed without a notice. If you are a woman, you get pregnant, you cannot be dismissed on that ground. All those ideas were copied in certain what we call International Labour Organization meetings in Geneva. So parliamentarians went there. They had those discussions, they adopted those resolutions, they brought them here.
So the difference between a workshop, a conference, and a football match.
Of course, the same principle.
Parliamentarians are going to watch football games in Russia.
Of course, the same principle applies there. You will find where a parliamentarian will go there. You will see how stadiums are made. You will see, for instance, how games are organized. For instance, tournaments. You know, by the way, the other day we had been given hosting rights. I don't know for what tournament, but we are unable to prepare well. So maybe if they go there, they see how Russia was able to organize that match, those matches, they can bring those ideas into Kenya. To me, the principle is okay. The problem, which I may have with what is happening there, is the issue called modesty. Yes, when you go there, you should not come shouting or telling people, putting things on social media that you are there, particularly because you're a public leader. We public leaders, there are things which may not be legally wrong, but they have negative ethic connotation.
Yes. And
if you go out there, don't go, let's say for instance, you're in a pub, you don't go start drinking without any prohibitions. You start posting those photos on public social media. To me, I think from where I sit, that is where the public is raising a focus, and to me, it's quite fair. It's quite unfair for those of us who are there to show that to the public.
Okay, Bonakiro, the two gentlemen have defended their colleagues and Parliament in this kind of action. You've been a member of Parliament.
No, you have misquoted me. No, you have misquoted me. No. For clarity, I have defended the principle of Kenyan parliamentarians interacting with the outside world. That principle I have defended. What I have not defended,
generally,
what I have not defended is public show of some success or some, I don't know what, that is what,
but you're okay with MPs traveling to Russia to watch a football match
yes,
on taxpayers' expense.
Fred. The principle is okay, but showing off
Fred, I
is
think
the
my
issue.
colleague needs to, he's not making a point. he's trying to sit in the middle, which is not right. If the principle is right, what are you saying, that did the government misspend the resources? Was it right that the resources of government was used? Because even if you didn't post a picture, the fact is that some resources were spent for these MPs to visit wherever they were going to Russia. So I think can you sit in the middle, my brother? Can you stand straight and say that you don't support parliamentary allocations, you are also part of parliamentary
He does
leadership.
support. He's just declared that
He's part of
supports.
parliamentary
The only
leadership.
problem he has is the selfies they're taking.
Remember, he's part of parliamentary leadership.
Yes.
He's a leader in parliament.
Yes, all the...
So whatever has happened as his concurrence. So I think let us say that the principle is right. Parliament does not make mistakes. I think Kenya should desist from assuming that whatever Parliament does is always against the public
Parliament
interest.
does not make a mistake.
Can I comment? Yes, no, my point is, yes, go there, but don't
take selfies.
Yes, and post
that is
them.
the only problem
and don't post them.
Selfies. The problem surely, Kirwa, is beyond the selfies, don't you think?
Well, I think so. I think times have changed. I was in that house for 20 years, and such trips never occurred. I remember the
Those
trip.
are 4 or 5 World Cups you missed.
Yes, I did. But I don't regret, because I don't think I would have become a finer footballer. And even those members of parliament who are already in that trip, I don't think any one of them will join the national team. But on issues of substance, a country whose debt is growing by 15% per annum can ill afford to do that kind of trip. Even the public perception alone. It is not really the cost that worries me, but the image. You are telling these guys that you've been going to borrow money from them, that you look, we can afford to spend at the expense of the taxpayer in an economy that is not growing, it's almost stagnating, and it's being eaten by the debt. As you know, Fred, next year the money that we are collecting from our people, 50% of which will go towards paying their debt, and the rest, of course, will be in other programs. So I think Parliament has acquired a lot of freedom. I remember the first time I went to Parliament, we were a department in the office of the President, and controls were very strict. So increasingly Parliament have gotten a latitude of freedom, but they must be responsive on how they handle that freedom. This is not acceptable. As a taxpayer, I pay my taxes in a small way, and cumulatively we are the ones funding them and also funding some of our pensions. So it is wrong for them to have done that.
Yes.
Can I issue a rejoinder?
Fine, go ahead.
What is our biggest exchange earner in this country? Number one currently is what we call remittances. Remittances mean the people who have immigrated to the Western region or even other countries, the money they send to their relatives. The last year, I think we collected about 150 billion out of that. The second one is tea. It gave us, I think, 100 billion or something. So meaning, our interaction with the rest of the world is always positive. And therefore, to a certain extent, when you send our representative to the outside world, you send them to those meetings, you send them to those areas, they interact with our diaspora. That's a positive thing. We have Kenyans there. I can tell you, for instance, they will go there, they must interact with our Kenyan ambassador in Russia. They will discuss what are the programs they can get from Russia which can, for instance, benefit our people. I can tell you, for instance, in Moscow, there's a university that's called Patrice Lumumba that used to host African students. And therefore, you may find, yes, they have gone for football, but at a certain point, they will visit the Patrice Lumumba University and probably come up with a deal.
Members of the Sports and Culture Committee as well.
Let me tell you, the point is, and I want to disagree with him.
Yes.
We need to encourage our leaders to interact with the rest of the world. By doing that, you are going to increase things like remittances.
I like to differ with my friend Senator Kangata. And you see, Senator is clearly indicating our biggest foreign earning activities. But what you need to do is to differentiate. This is not a foreign earning activity. This is a foreign spending activity. And again, the foreign earning activities that you are referring to, that is foreign exchange earning, activities that we have around the world, and of course in Kenya. I mean, we are talking of hardworking Kenyans who are in the diaspora. You know, we are not talking of us taking ourselves, and I being a public leader also, to a foreign land, of course, to participate in a fun, what is perceived as a fun activity. We would like our parliamentarians to interact with the rest of the world. That is no question.
And they get enough opportunities.
They do get
because
enough
there are other
opportunities.
interactions. They attend conferences, they attend workshops and all these things.
That is it. And if it were another activity, another sporting activity, whereby we are either learning on how to program, how to come up with these kind of activities, how to plan a football match, or even how to finance infrastructural development for sporting activities, those would be more credible activities where our parliamentarians would engage in.
I've not had a chance, Bonasa Matali, to leave Kenya this time during the World Cup, but I've watched the World Cup, and I can tell you quite a number of advancements, even in terms of technology, even in terms of stadia. Was it really necessary? What exactly do we expect from that report from parliamentarians, 20 of them, that they'll come and tell us this is what we've learned, this is what we should implement in terms of our football?
First, let me disagree with the speaker for my colleague here. You cannot harvest where you've not sown, because you're saying that we should not spend resources. If you are going to get remittances from abroad, then we also must put some resources. Two, this is the largest gathering of the world, and I want to commend my colleagues who are there, who are actually demonstrating to the whole world that they are Kenyans, and everybody else watching their TVs in all the world could see that Kenyans were also present, because this is a forum which really we must use to market our country. Even by their presence and donning Kenyan colors alone, for me, is enough marketing, for the world.
I have a photo of Senator Omanga. And,
yes. If there's a way they demonstrated, Fred, if there's a way they demonstrated that they are Kenyans,
next time we'll actually send a delegation to attend the wedding at the Queen's Palace.
That is even right. That is even right. So lastly, let me say that we need to market Kenya by all means. Right now, for me, as the member of Parliament for Lagos Songa, we're having the Barack Obama coming to visit us next week. That's a huge opportunity for Kenyans to market ourselves, to showcase whatever we do, and to position our country. Let us use all these opportunities that are there, whether they are inside Kenya or they are outside Kenya, so that we can convert them into resources, just the same way my colleague has said, in terms of remittances, in terms of positioning the country, in terms of marketing Kenya. I think that's what they should have done, and I think if there's anything that they did not do, possibly we should have given all these members of parliament Kenyan uniforms.
Wow. Can I comment?
I will give you a chance, Senator. What do you think? Is it right for members of parliament to go attend the World Cup finals in Russia at your expense? The SMS line is 22422, and I'll be sampling some of your views, Senator.
There are so many opportunities out there which Kenya has never exploited. One, for instance, we have about 40, I think, to 50 embassies in a world where we have about 200 states. Meaning, when you compare ourselves in other countries, even our level of development, we are here to open many and more embassies out there. And therefore, the principle of our interaction with the outside world, and this is one example, this is an apt example, should be encouraged. Because as my colleague has said, once we set our leadership there, I can tell you, yes, you have just highlighted the aspect of the fun, the fun aspect of it. But they also do serious business. Once the Kenyan delegations goes to Moscow, they will interact with the political leaders of Moscow. And when it comes to the issue called marketing, the best time to market, including, let's say you have your business, is during free time. So they will, for instance, be seated with some members of parliament of the so-called Russian Duma, watching these games. They will discuss Kenyan society. They will strike even a deal. Best deals are not usually struck in offices. They're usually struck at golf courses, right? Am I right? During social events, that's when you strike the best deal. So you maybe Kipchumba Murkomen, as we speak, is talking with Mr. Putin, and they are seated watching the game.
Senator, let's be fair to us, because I doubt they will get to meet the Russian president at any point during this.
No, who tells you that?
I wish the PK is trying to paint was true. Nothing can be further from the truth, because I don't think this delegation, the picture that is coming out, is this delegation was not properly structured beyond just enjoying the games. So they went to enjoy the games, which is okay for them. But the picture that is getting outside there is that they actually own a spree. And that spree is not really positive to the eyes of many Kenyans, and even those who support us as a nation. Finally, I think it is important that members of parliament realize perception is everything. The perception that is getting to us as taxpayers is that these guys are just enjoying at the expense of the taxpayer, and there is no value for that. Now, look at the 45 million. Had we prepared a team that we make even an attempt towards the World Cup with that money, probably would have made a bigger name. Like Croatia is a country that many people did not know until the other day, when they made almost now, they are going for the finals at the World Cup. They are going to make an impact out of the sportsmen and women. Usually, when our boys and girls run and the national anthem is played, it does more diplomacy than all the diplomats in the world. For that 1 minute that the national anthem is played, those boys and girls, they actually make many of us proud that Kenya's flag is rising high. Unlike what we spend like in New York, saying that we want to improve the image of Kenya. So what we should be doing is to spend on the people who can carry our flag.
And Bwana Speaker, probably it would not be much of a problem if at all Parliament was really helping our national team. And as far as football is concerned, we've not even seen Parliament's involvement in as far as Harambee Stars is concerned. Their performance has been dismal. They don't even take part in regional tournaments successfully. Probably if I told the Sports and Culture Committee of Bunge, as well as a Bunge FC, if I told there was some contribution towards progress and development of the national football team, don't you think that maybe Kenyans would say, okay, fine, probably you're lying something?
Indeed, Jubilee government promised Kenyans 5, stadia of international standard. And I wish, again, parliamentarians and Kenyans would focus their energies on that kind of delivery. And I think that is where I think even our president sometimes gets extremely frustrated, where probably these kind of efforts are not gaining traction as they should. And you find us wanting to go the easier way much more than going the more, the long cut, the hard-working Kenyans should be. Because you find that we have a very big problem with investment in the, especially infrastructural support for sports. And that is an area where I hope our parliamentarians can really put a lot of efforts in. And so that we can have infrastructural, support for all our sportsmen, at the football level, even athletics, even other games that we are doing pretty well. I have seen, for example, like the game of chess coming up very well. In Nyeri, for example, I have seen very many tournaments which are being organized lately in that line. And I wish we can put more finances, more funds in that kind of an aspect. And when parliamentarians do get an opportunity to go and enjoy the game, even at their own expense, leave alone even at the government expense, I would encourage them to be very, very modest, because we are carrying the flag of our nation. I mean, we are carrying the aspirations of our people. And the moment they see like we are being too extravagant, whether even with our own resources, that extravagance is not something that is going to encourage public confidence in our lives and in the public sphere.
If at all Parliament was doing much more towards developing sports in Kenya, I don't think these questions would be asked. The Sports and Culture Committee of Parliament has been very quiet with regard to what's happening in as far as sports is concerned. I think the only time they came out strongly was after the Olympics, when there was a dismal performance, and then there was a scandal after that. But Kenya lost out on an opportunity to host a big tournament, sporting tournament, the other day. That committee has been quiet about that. Then we come and see them spending taxpayers' money to go watch the World Cup. Don't you think that Kenyans are justified in this kind of anger?
First of all, Kenyans, Parliament should not take the blame for weaknesses in sports leadership. I think this issue squarely falls on the shoulders of Jubilee government. And even to tell you, to show that the government is not serious about sports, is to just look at the leadership of sports. The person who has been appointed to be the charge of sports in the cabinet.
Parliament is the oversight
It's not one of the best. Why can't the president look for talent?
Well, that CS was vetted by the same parliament, the same National Assembly.
That's why I'm blaming Jubilee government. I'm saying Jubilee government. My brother, let me have my time. Jubilee government had the honors of identifying a suitable person, a competent person who is be able to improve and bring rationalization and capacity in sports. But they went for somebody who, in my view, is not competent enough. And even if you look at the previous government, we had Wario again, had no history in the area of sports, even in management. We say CSS are supposed to be leaders. They're supposed to be in charge of basically running the show in terms of policy. But the government does not help this country by the kind of systems, the kind of personalities they have brought for us to run that sector. Okay. But as members of parliament, we have provided resources. Nobody is saying that there are no resources in the Ministry of Sports to be able to run the show. Okay, that is our work. And we have also put in place this, the sports sector does not lack laws. Yes, for it to run. If at all the sporting industry in Kenya would work and work well, this would provide a lot of employment for the young Kenyans who are currently just languishing in poverty. The fact that you talk about leadership in sports, definitely the Sports and Culture Committee is part of that leadership. Yes? When you talk about the Education Committee of Parliament, it is the leadership of the education sector, and we see what they do day in, day out. This Committee of Parliament has not really come out to be seen to be doing anything. Don't you think that Kenyans are justified to ask questions on why they deserve a trip to the World Cup?
Yes, I agree with you. Kenyans are justified to be livid, and for several reasons. One, the show-off. I think, personally, I believe in humility. I believe even if you are successful, you should not show off. Particularly taking into account our country has so many poor people. We are a poor country. So therefore, even if you get these advantages, don't go putting up photos of you having fun. To me, I think the best case scenario would have been put up photos showing you interacting, let's say, with the parliamentarians, discussing serious business. To me, that would have been good for me. But I agree, when you show off you, I don't know, playing, I don't know, doing this, which to me is not core business of that trip. To me, I have an issue with that. And I agree with those people who are raising an issue. But then again, I'm defending the principle of us interacting with the Russians. Now, on to your question concerning the performance of sport. Yes, it is true. We parliamentarians, we have a role. Because we can always summon the CS in charge of sports, ask him questions. If at all it's an issue of budget, it's upon the National Assembly to appropriate enough funds to ensure the sporting events in Kenya are well funded. Members of Parliament have CDF. Under CDF Act, a certain percent is supposed to be designed or appropriated purely for sports. Questions should be asked. Kenyans should be asking questions. How much has been given to sports? In every constituency, do we have sports events organized by CDF? What is the impact of those sporting events? To that extent, I agree that our sports are not sufficiently catered for in this country. And indeed, it is true that Parliament has a major role in terms of appropriation of money, in terms of CDF management of sports at the local level. But I also raise an issue that we must also celebrate that interaction. Okay.
Bonakira, do you have anything to add before we go on a break?
Well, just imagine Millicent, for those of us who know her, we can see she's with the Croatian team. But people who don't know her, they will wonder, who is this woman or who is this lady in the midst of Croatians? It is actually a spectacle to find her in the midst of that. It doesn't have any meaning at all. And I would have expected members of Parliament to spend more time on how we can nurture the talent, like athletics. How many of our people are languishing in poverty after representing the country in high-profile meetings, like the Olympics and so forth? What are we doing so that we are able to harness that potential and give them a decent exit when they get out of sports? That should be the focus that we need to do. But when they come with their money, we tax it, and we never spend anything on it. Some countries like Ethiopia, when an athlete comes, let's say, with $1 million, they give him an equivalent of 70% of that, and they give him a prime property to buy or to build. like Haile Gabriel Haile Selassie owns 3 buildings in Addis Ababa and another hotel in Awasa out of the sports activities. They finance, then they pick the money when the first client gets to the hotel. Here in Kenya, they bring the money, we tax it. And when they retire, they are now gardening in, what do you call this, in Kasarani, and some of them are bouncers in Europe and America. It is unfortunate. This is how we take our heroes.
Yes. And yet the MPs in charge of that, the Sports and Culture Committee, are enjoying their time in Russia watching the World Cup. Let's now take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at other headlines.
Out of 460, only